Well, the next question is, how do we make merits? How do we accrue merits? How is this done? This is accruing of merits. If you invite 50 friends to lunch, you got to do an invitation card. You got to call up. You have to make sure that you buy all the food. You have to make sure that you go to the supermarket to buy the right kind of food. You have to cook it. You have to wash it. And then you have to wash the dishes. But in here, the opportunity is, you can invite 50 people in here without doing all these things. You just donate some money. So isn't it simple? It's not easy to invite so many people. Right now is a rare opportunity. Tai Xu Da Si, there was a monk called Tai Xu, and he said that before learning to become the Buddha, you learn to be a right individual, an individual that accrue merits, then an individual that is kind and compassionate. You want to be the Buddha, you have to be the right person first, learn to be the righteous person. So the procedure to donate is extremely simple, and we welcome it. We can even write it down for you. Tom can write it down for you. And your name will be read in here. I will announce the name. And some people say, well, I don't need to sell my name. It's not selling of names. The fact that you're donating to a lunch, you're encouraging other people to do merits. It's not selling your name. It's just like when you build a temple, in the stone plaque, it says that, Mr. So-and-so built and this temple and do all these things, is not because he wants to sell himself, because he wants to remind the younger generation, this is something that you can do. This is something that your forefathers have always been considering. Building a temple or organizing a lecture or doing any merits, it can be written as a memory in name. And it's not selling yourself. Don't get it wrong. So I can see that more and more of our Caucasian members are getting used to this donation procedure. It's just maybe in the early days they don't know about it. It's always good to give than to receive. So feel free, if you think that, I just want to donate a small little amount, that's good too. And it does not matter how much. It's your heart. Okay. So another question. I still don't understand the 5 skandhas are empty. Can you explain more about the 5 skandhas and emptiness? Well, that takes a lot of time to explain it, but in the Heart Sutra, the Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra, when Avalokitesvara was practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, he perceived that the 5 skandhas are empty and thereby relieve himself from all suffering. So if you can perceive the 5 skandhas are empty, then slowly you will not be clinging to the world. Now, one of these 5 skandhas I already have mentioned. You see, to explain a Buddhist concept, you really have to go in details. Maybe then I can explain it to you in details. As I said, Buddhism is about researching into the beings and the environs of the beings in the world. So as sentient beings, what are we made up of? who is I? Who is this individual that I get born into this world? Where do I come from? Where do I go after I die? We all have to probe into these philosophical questions. Why did I come to this world at all? Why do I have to go through, some people call it suffering, quote and unquote suffering. Why do I have to go through all this? And then life is short, and then I have to leave. Why is it all like that? What am I made up of? Well, we are made up of the 5 skandhas. What are these 5 skandhas? These 5 skandhas is body and mind. We're made up of the body and the mind. What is this body made up of? This body is made up of matter. The mind it's of course the spiritual side. In the Chinese language is 色受想行识. The body, it's of course the body that we carry. The skeleton, the skin, the organ, the heart, the eyes. You know what you're made up of. Matter. And in the Sanskrit language, it's rupa. It's rupa. It's form. We're made up of the form, right? But other than just the form, the body, we also have that part, which is extremely important that maybe some people ignore. We are made up of also the mind. Not just the brain, the mind. What is this mind? Well, we also make up of perception, conception, volition, and consciousness. So in other words, in the Sanskrit language, we also make up of the Vadana, Samjna, Samskara, and Vijnana. So we also make up of this part, the 2 parts, the body and the mind. And how come the body and the mind are empty? Then you have to analyze every constituent of the 5 skandhas. Why is the matter empty? Why is our body you know what emptiness is? Emptiness in the Sanskrit language is sunyata. What are the characteristics of something we call something being empty? It is impermanent, it is dependent arising, it is conditioned, it is relative, it's not absolute. We usually have mistaken the world, mistaken the relative to be the absolute. We mistaken the condition to be the unconditioned. We mistaken the insubstantial to be the substantial. That's why we are clinging to the world. That's why we are suffering. Why is our body empty? Because our body is conditioned. Why am I born? I'm born because my parents come together and give me the birth, and then I become an embryo inside my mom's. And then my mom gave birth to me, and then I grow from a baby into into a form, and then I grow and all that. So all this is dependent arising. This body does not have its own self-inherent nature, its inherent existence. Why? If these bodies want to be sick, I cannot prevent it. I don't want to be sick. You have to cure it of the sickness. If this body wants to age, getting older and older, you cannot say, stop the aging. If body wants to die, I cannot say, I don't want to die. Can you do that? Can you tell? Are you in absolute control of your body? Of course you are not. You can control of your movement. You can move north, south, east, west. And this body, as we always give an example, is like a lease apartment. When the lease expires, you've got to go. However, you're going to maintain it. You're going to whitewash it. You want to make sure that it's working well. So, this body, it's sunyata. This body is dependent arising. This body is impermanent. This body is without its real self-nature. Why do we cling to it, though? We cling to this body. And that is clinging to the form. Now, how about the spiritual side? What do we have in our mind? We have perception. We have when we talk about the spiritual side, the mentality side, we're talking about the perception, the conception, the volition, and the consciousness. We also have to understand the Astavijnana, which is the 8 consciousnesses. The Buddhist teaching said we have 8 consciousnesses. The eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the nose consciousness, the taste consciousness, the touch consciousness. There's 5 consciousnesses. And there's also the 6th consciousness, which is the manas consciousness. The manas consciousness interact with the foregoing 5 consciousness and carry out daily activities for you. As I always give you an example, the 5 consciousness, your eyes, your nose, your ears, your taste, your body, are your salesmen. And then the manas consciousness is the manager, to control the salesman. And other than the 6th consciousness, there's also the 7th consciousness in you, which is the ego consciousness. That ego consciousness has been born life after life after life, carrying that ego consciousness body after body. In other words, we change our form in every life, but that ego consciousness has been with us all the time. That's why when a baby is born, you thought he's pure. This baby is pure to the world, but he's not. He has carried his 7 consciousness, the ego consciousness, with him into this world. That's why he's born with jealousy, he's born with greediness, he's born with, to a certain extent, depends on his karma, hatred. So all mental afflictions, jealousy, hatred, greediness, you name them. There are 2 parts to it. The one part are the innate ones that you carry along, and the other part is, of course, after you were born. Your education, your family background, and all that affects your present life consciousness. So that's your 7th consciousness. We call that the mano consciousness, or the ego consciousness. And sometimes, if we give an example by using company, assuming that our body is a company, then the 5 senses are the salesman and the 6th consciousness is the manager. And what about the 7th consciousness? That's the board of directors. The board of directors only interested in himself, in making the money. He wants to have a good financial statements. He wants to have more assets and less liabilities. He wants to have, you name it. If you're an accountant, you know what I mean. You want equity. You understand? You want to build up your own stuff. You don't care about the others. Of course, there's some directors who have social responsibility. They want to care for the whole society. But usually, a private company cares only for himself, the board of directors. And all these also leads to this 8th consciousness, which is the alaya consciousness, which is the storage consciousness. And if we can give an example this is the archives of the company. The board of directors can go, the salesman can be fired, the general manager can quit. But the archives of the company, the files, the memory, all this stay. And that's roll into the reincarnation after reincarnation. So that's how we are. We always are reincarnating because our body and mind are not pure. We think we're pure. Another example I always give out, which is always given in the text of Vijnana, of the Vijnana school, the Yogacara school, it's when you see, if there's a piece of rope in the dark, you try to think about this example. In the dark, you see a piece of rope, you don't know, you think that it's a snake. Because in the dark, there's no light. In other words, an analogy is for no wisdom, no illumination of your mind. If you got no wisdom, it's just like in the dark, that piece of rope is a snake. Because that rope, relative to its environment of darkness, appears as a snake. It does not appear as a rope. When you see it in the dark, it's a snake, and you get scared. However, when we turn on the light, in other words, when your mind is illuminated by wisdom, you know, that's not a snake, that's a rope. Because you have the wisdom to understand, it's not a snake, it's a rope. So you know you're wrong. But then let me tell you, is it really right that that roop is a roop? Is it absolute? Even that roop does not have inherent existence. What is this roop made up of? This roop is made up of plastic, with made up of, what do you call that? Jute? J-U-T-E, right? It's a jute, it's threads, it's color and all that is material and you know, all linked together becomes a roop. That roop is only a false name. That roop does not have an inherent existence. That roop is impermanent. That roop is without its nature. And that only not applies to roop, applies to everything in this world. Is sunyata, is empty. But when we see it, we don't see it that way. That's the reason why we see wealth, reputation, money, all that as real, as substantial, as absolute. And you think that happiness flows from those things. That's why we are suffering. It's the whole sutra that we can talk about, the Heart Sutra. And it also said that emptiness is no different than form, and form is no different than emptiness. Why? The concept of sunyata or of emptiness cannot be realized clearly unless through form. An example I always give is, without the bulb, how do you know the existence of electricity? You need the bulb to know that, oh, the light, by looking at the bulb, we know that electricity exists. The bulb changes form all the time, but the electricity is always inherently there. We cannot hate the bulb because it breaks down on you, because by looking at the bulb, we know that the bulb is only in appearance, it is form. But what is behind it? What is the essence behind it? There's electricity behind it. And sometimes you call it the Buddha nature, if we can use that analogy. We have that Buddha nature that we have to realize. When that Buddha nature, that assuming that it's a mirror, is always covered with dust and dirt for millions of reincarnations, we don't see our real self. When we eradicate all this dirt and mud and dust, it's one shining brightness, we can see the real self. That's Tathagata. That's Sunyata. That's Prajna Paramita. Different names. Does not matter how you call it. Some people call it the Buddha nature. Some people call it Tathagata. Some people call it suchness. Some people call it the real mind. It does not matter how you call it. It's just a name. That's the real you. That's the one brightness, one purity. And that's what a Buddhist is looking for. Believing in the Buddha does not mean that you always get, I want blessings from the Buddha. I want prosperity, I want longevity, I want wealth, I want all that. You're only looking for greediness. So the Buddhist teaching is telling us, remember the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path? That's very basic. You got to know this world is full of suffering, and there's a cost of suffering. The cost of suffering is clinging, ignorance, and that's a method to stop it. And once the cessation is ceased, then you attain nirvana. Very basic, but the most important. The Four Noble Truths, always think in terms of the Four Noble Truths too, because it seems very basic, but you really give them in-depth analysis to it, it's the most important. Don't just look at the tree, look at the whole forest. Don't just look at the sutra and that's what the sutra says. Look at the whole forest.